Good evening, everyone. CSMCH Film Club welcomes you all to the documentary screening of the documentary film titled Flyoverdelhi, which was released in 2004, directed by Professor Paulo Favero and Angelo Fontana. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. So the movie offers insights into the lives of young middle class men and women in Delhi in the director's own words, addressing both lay people and academics. This film breaks away from the stylistic choices that are conventionally associated with an ethnographic film. So, following the screening, we'll have a discussion on film, ethnography, and creativity as well. Now, I would like to introduce CSMCH Film Club to those who are not aware of our activities. So, in JNU, we acquire knowledge not just through a structured classroom system, but also through student activities encompassing politics, literature, and culture. The CSMCH Film Club was formed in 2019 with the objective of developing a platform where young scholars and experts would come together, exchange perspectives, and delve into the intricacies of socio-political, economic, and public health issues through the medium of cinema. So the aim has been to position films as a unifying force, a place where diverse minds could convene and embark on insightful discussions which slightly transcends the traditional boundaries of knowledge dissemination. The club has till date screened around 22 films of varying topics and has strived to bring the directors of many of these movies through student and faculty networks and have had enriching discussions that include the artists' perspectives as well. So, on behalf of the club, I welcome Professor Paolo Favero to this program. And also, I'd also like to welcome Dr. Sunita Reddy, Associate Professor at CSMCH, who will be introducing the guest and joining our discussion as well. Welcome, ma'am. Now, I would like to request Dr. Sunita Reddy to introduce our guest today.
Professor Ramila Bisht is also here, my colleague, and we are waiting for other colleagues may also join and some more students may join. Paulo Favero is an associate professor in film studies and visual culture at the University of Antwerp, Belgium. As a visual anthropologist, he has devoted his career to the study of visual cultures in India and especially in Delhi. His core interest is the role of images, both new and old, in human life. And his ongoing project is entitled Dying, Living, and Loving in Delhi. And his fields of research and work has been on images and politics in post-colonial India, on emerging technologies, on visual and sensory ethnography, on art-based methods, and existential anthropology. He's author of single-authored books, Image Making in India, that is by Routledge 2020, The Present Image by Palgrave 2018, and also Dentro Oltre Imagine, Meltami 2017. And then India Dreams, that's again 2005, that's based on his PhD work, which is one can download free from Stockholm University. And his new initiatives are into TV series and also photo essays. And his new film, which is going to come, is on meditation and consciousness. And I had a brief chat before coming here, and lots of interesting areas which Paulo has been working. And he is here for a conference at Delhi University. And Delhi is his second home because he's been coming here for almost 20 years and he feels more at home here than his own place, though very much from Sweden and Italy, but now working in Belgium. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy the film and then we'll carry on with the discussion. It's all yours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Reddy, and thank you to the film club. I had just one little the speaker is talking. I just had like one little warning. It's quite funny. First of all, it's an incredible joy to sit at JNU and talk after I think 12 years or something like that. Last time I was here was ages ago. But the film is incredibly old. It's in 4:3. And you have to make a bit of the effort. I mean, incredibly old. It's 20 years old for a film. Aesthetically, you're going to see the difference. So it was filmed in mini DV, so before memory stick times. And it's not DSLR, it's proper videography. And it was really aimed at a Western audience. It was aimed at provoking the understanding that people in Europe had at that point of time of India. Hence the very narrow focus on this idea of banality. I wanted people to get struck by the fact that this is just, why did you go all the way to India to film something like that? It just looks like here. And that's a critique I received once. So you have to kind of give room to that thought that it was not designed to be seen here. It was designed to be seen in Europe, but to challenge the politics of representation of India in the European popular culture and in the European film market. That's the only thing I have to say. The rest we can talk about later.
I think we can switch off some lights. Coming from an anthropologist and giving a ethnographic film, the whole film actually captures so many things. Especially, I'm struck with it's been 20 years now. 2004 is when you shot the film, and bringing in so many issues, and especially looking at the middle and upper middle classes of marriage, films, and all those glitters of Delhi. It's very interesting, and now to see that 20 years later, the mall which you showed in the Gurgaon was the first mall when people used to go all over. All people from Delhi used to go to Gurgaon. Now you have almost like every other district having a couple of malls already. So, as an anthropologist, shooting an ethnographic film is a long process. Maybe you can reflect on that, but I would like other students and a colleague, Dr. Bish, to share her thoughts on the film, and then maybe we can open for discussion.
Can I first ask, do you recognize anyone? Because that's always, I was used to show it outside of India. Any faces you recognize, apart from of course, there are some usual suspects. Dipankar Gupta, Pabli Saraf perhaps, Pavan Varma, of course, Urvashi, of course, as well, but not the others. All right, that's
Please introduce yourself first.
yeah. True, very true. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good point. First bit, the the core idea, let's say, in the theory behind this kind of film was one that I wanted to reach out to open audiences and not exclusively to academics. So it was not designed as an academic film. So you have all these moments of like entertainment, which are meant to actually make it quite light, right? So it was like possibly going on television. Now, the other conceptual thought is that globalization so the visual material that you see here builds on what I collected during my ethnography with photography and other tools, but without making a proper film. I took those stories and I kind of threw them back at the people who gave me that material and I reenacted them, right? It was almost a form of reenactment. So, what would you do today? Maybe 2 years later. Is this still valid for you? Asking people to actually perform themselves. Okay. So what came out of that was also like a very concrete look into an epoch that I tried to metaphorize through a visual language, which I called the MTV style at that time. So the fact that you zoom in on people, the camera is wobbly, moves around, that what was MTV was doing. So I was trying to convey to viewers in the West, because again, that was my primary audience and television viewers, through the visual language, a metaphor of modernity. So you're entering a space of modernity. You're not entering, if you've seen Forest of Bliss, which is one of my favorite ethnographic films on India, Varanasi, the Ghats and all that bit. And then you have this idea of real time, slow time, because India is slow, India is village, India is spiritual. No, so, and here I wanted to go totally opposite to that discourse and enter like a metropolitan space with the speed and the kind of dialogues, and then I use that style as the language, and it's zooming in and looking out, zooming in and looking out. Now, talking about the zooming in, it went out of hands, especially because I was not, dude, all the interviews are not filmed by me, but the externals and the night scenes are filmed by me. There's a very gendered approach, which I discovered only when we were done with the film, 5 weeks down the line, from my partner, whom I'm incredibly grateful to, Angelo Fontana. He won like some major festivals in documentary film, but his gazing is gender. He zooms in on women, not on men. Never. Which I found incredibly disturbing, and I had to still keep it in because the dialogues with Pooja were so revealing, and I tried doing the best I could, but you could not but reveal the zooming. So the zooming is, how to say, decided upon as a metaphor, right? But the diversity in zooming between different gendered subjects was not planned. And that's also like how you think how cameras are adopted, right? They become an extension also of our gazing. So I would not have filmed it like that, frankly, but he did, and I couldn't fix that. Another level that pitches into what you were saying is the fact that all the talking was a way for me to metaphorize globalization as a rumor. It was also something that people spoke about. It was so much opinion. I'm thinking of the years from 1999 to 2004, roughly. That's when my ethnography was built. For me, ethnography was very much a rumor also. Something that did not always translate into practice, but people liked talking about. It's a bit like Dipankar says that. Pavan Varma also says it, that it's a way you talk about yourself in an as if condition, right? And so I had people talking so much, also to give a sense of all this talking, gossiping, wording about globalization, because I think globalization was that. So all the time I play with two levels of content, one which is explicit. We talk about couples relationships. We talk about wedding, but there's another message which is more under the surface, which is more coded, and it's generally driven by style. Again, MTV cameras, modernity, talking a lot, globalization as a rumor. So these are like two layers of content that kind of add to each other. I don't know if it replies to your thing. No, but you were asking also about today. Yeah, I was just joking now, saying that those kids, you would not be able to put them in a film today. And most of if I had to chase everyone who was in the film for a permission, it's a tough mission. Today, a lot of that has changed. And frankly, I still find a lot of willingness to be filmed when I work. But the context, I mean, doing it on a street like that, I wouldn't know. Part of my plan is, in fact, next year to redo this, to take the same people. We are still very much connected. All the couples you see in there are no longer couples, that goes without saying. But the people are still there and they are still very much friends. So I thought of bringing them all together, look at the film again. And so where are we now? And what would people who are 20 years younger than you be today, right? And try to contrast that. Then I think the camera work will be a totally different story.
Very basic question. I don't come with a background of anthropology. What makes an ethnographic film an ethnographic film? And because this was made for television audiences in part, it's for like lay audiences.
Yeah.
But have you gotten responses in terms of them being able to discern the difference in content?
Yeah.
Different type of
Yeah.
film.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that I guided it towards open audiences doesn't mean that it was not an ethnographic film. It is strictly ethnographic in the sense that it tries to offer a point of view which is emic, right, in our language. So it's a point of view. So all these visions, I don't share them, right? But they are the visions of the people I was working with, right? And I asked them to reenact them, and don't shy away from being for giving bad jokes, using bad words. That's you. Just feel free to be you, right? I'm not gonna censor you. So that is the ethnographic, the sense also of giving enough of context. But what I tried to remove is the, how to say, in a photograph you would call it the captioning, right? So I don't want to control what you will see when you look at it. So I didn't put a narrator's voice, because otherwise I would hop in and say, yeah, in Delhi, most of it between this age and that, they do this and this and that. I didn't want to give that commentary. I wanted that commentary to emerge from these endless dialogues, which again doesn't mean that I don't give a commentary, because my commentary is in the editing, is in these parallel narratives, especially the one on gender. I still today adore. I mean, I always laugh at it because they say the same thing, negating each other. But so of course I give a comment, but it still builds on their own phrasing, and we checked it bit by bit. So we start by saying, "Listen, do you remember when we went to Pahar Ganja? Went to that. Yes. Shall we do it again? Yes." And then we filmed it. We looked at the material, said, "Did you like this? Did you like that? Oh no, please don't put that in, right?" And then when I had like a rough cut, I just shared the bits that were critical, asking, it's 20 years ago. You wouldn't share materials that easily, but I would call them up and say, we have a moment when you are eating a hamburger. Do you mind? Yeah, please don't show me eating a hamburger. And then you remove it. So I tried to the best of my capacity to cover it. Still, you are the author, and I think it's also when we write text, we make those decisions. We just have to be responsible in making decisions that don't hang out people in public or don't harm them, right? But that is my understanding of the ethnographic. It's really grounded in their views and opinions, not mine, right? But then the form, I tried to lighten it up so that I wouldn't control too much of the message, and I would allow viewers to actually lean back, have a laugh, listen a bit to the music, and come back into it, so it would sail out of the academic circuit. That was the ambition, at least, and it kind of worked out like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just at the very end, because I was not. I'm actually one of the buffoons shouting in the car at night, which those who know me recognize my voice. Of course, for a generic audience, you wouldn't. But I'm very much there. But I didn't want to build it around me. And in fact, this MTV style works in your absence. But then I don't know. I like putting a place where I show, because I'm really filming with the camera here. You wouldn't be able to do it with a DSLR, because DSLR, wouldn't work. With video cameras, you could still do it. That was very much on purpose, just to really show the viewer that I am there, right? And they know me also. They call me by the name. I'm not also someone coming, you know, it's not journalism, right? So that's very, very wanted. But for the rest, I tried, how to say, not to make it about me at all. The conversations are very strictly one-on-one on me. I mean, there's this, I really, what you see there for every character, every conversation you see in one of the episodes is 3-4 hours. It's very, very long and intense, very tiring. And that's what I love doing. But then I can't film. Then I let Angelo moving around doing his disasters and his beauties as well, because his image is spot on for that need.
How do I put it? I'm not talking to you as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk to you as an anthropologist. So, would it be possible for an anthropology student to make a film like this and use it as PhD material in your country? That's my one question. My second question is that if so, how should the student conceptualize the whole thing?
Mm-hmm.
With anthropology and filmmaking both there, how should the student conceptualize it? And three, you had a partner who could film while you did intensive interviews.
Yeah.
So would this necessarily be a project where you need a team, or could it be an independent anthropologist doing it? And in that case, how would one do it?
There you have the PhD. Exactly with those questions. Let me take the first one first. Yes, you can make a PhD on a film, but you cannot defend it on the film only unless it's a practice-based PhD. If we talk like the PhD on the arts, right, on a topic, yeah. So the social science PhD, I have a few students, one especially who's about to defend now. He made a film about the disappearing village. I was just mentioning it to you. And so he's writing something like 5 articles around that experience, around different aspects of the methodology, the participatory, the aesthetics, taking out different bits and pieces and elaborating upon them in the shape of a chapter or an article, depending on the format of publication. So universities sadly do not still accept films as a PhD with us, but how to say, we are elbowing ourselves into that scenario more and more. I've been doing that. That's been one of the key bits of my work so far. In fact, compared to your presentation, I became full professor a couple of years back, and I'm using my power to do exactly that. If we have any power, I'm just using it to put visual work in the curriculum. Because when I applied for my jobs, Flyoverdelhi could stay because it had the ethnographic element. I've done theater. I've done everything building on ethnography, video installations. I had to remove them in order not to generate fear that I would go there and play the artist, right? That was the fear of, so he has to be a professor, a decent one, right? So we are creating now, by means of the European Association of Social Anthropologists, we have a visual anthropology network that I'm chairing along with other people. Key to our agenda. We had it with the European Association of Communication Studies, and again we put it there. So the possibility of being evaluated through visual materials, which requires also that we accept, organizing evaluation methods. Right? It's your question. What makes it ethnographic or not? You have to be able to say what, right? And defend it according to the same principles of ethnographic validity and ethnographic authority. Right? I don't know if you use that distinction, Roger Sanjek. The validity is what you can prove. Rohit exists. He said those things. He's not an actor. He's not paid by me for saying rubbish, right? He is that. That's validity. Authority is that I have to give a sense of the way in which I convince you about Rohit being a good symbol into that epoch and into those phenomena. That's the authority. So we do exactly that. So I think we are heading in that direction. I think it is important that we do. Now, that does not need to be a film. And that's important because this is a film, but you can also use a camera to do visual research. So now I'm filming in a couple of places in Delhi. I've been doing for the past years, a retirement home and 2 shelters. I don't film with a film. I mean, I film, but I don't film with a film in mind. I film for understanding that world through the lens of a camera, through an embodied perspective. And that to me is something completely different. And I today don't believe in the fact that you can do both at the same time, frankly. But I've become a bit extreme in that. I go out and film something then I think if I would make a film on it, I would go back and film it again with the film in mind. And they lead, because a film needs still, I mean, there's a lot, like you said, probably today I would take out a lot of the stuff that I put in there, but still you need a narrative. A film needs a narrative, and a narrative is a compromise on what makes more sense to be narrated, but that's not necessarily the most interesting thing scientifically, right? So I think that is a bit of the evaluation. But you have a question in between the two, because this was the last bit. I started with the first. The teamwork, yeah. So to me, a good visual anthropologist should film. It's very simple because there is something in the form. So these games with the camera, I did them. I decided them with Angelo, but I knew that you can do them because I'm filming, right? I think that's important because commissioning the visual work is the classical operation where you then trust the content to be self-explanatory. But hélas, content comes with an incredible burden of a visual form. The choice of 4:3, the choice of 16:9, the coloring, the sound, they convey meaning to a viewer. So I think that we should be able to make those decisions together, do research with the camera. When we decide to turn that into a film, then we can put together a crew. By that point, you are a director and you know what you're doing. You decide upon all the stylistic bits. But I think it's not recommended to do like, in fact, a lot of scholars do say, okay, I'll let the camera to you. It works very well if you have a very concrete idea in mind. So if you want to do like a film to convince an audience about the importance of a phenomenon, fine. If you want to do this exploration of a world, I think you better embrace that. Or work with someone who also, and for instance, understands enough of anthropology and your content. That's another thing. But the two parts need to be one. You can't like hire a cameraman. I don't think it works. In my experience, it doesn't work. I don't know, maybe I'm radical in that because I have also colleagues who have positive experiences, but the camera brings back an opinion as well, right? The point of view, and metaphorically, but very substantially also. So you need to do that. And it's also important today to wonder whether film is the language to do these things. I stopped making film at a certain point because flat screens are not that interesting. We have other venues, we have smartphones, we have apps, so I went into designing apps for connecting visual notes to each other, thinking of designing VR spaces. I mean, there's so many spaces today that maybe are more suited to different kind of ethnographic endeavors. So if you work with embodied experience, yeah, maybe a VR space is actually more interesting than someone talking to you. So I think today it's a nice world. Sorry.
Especially in today's context, when everyone has this camera, Android camera where you can shoot, you can edit with free apps, and you see so many reels coming up. Everybody has their own niche, and everybody has their own hobby. And they make films around it, small reels, 1 minute reel, and they are so interesting, and you get so much hooked to it. And you start surfing, and there's no end to it. So I mean, now it's like having power in your hand, which you can shoot, and there's no restriction on showing to the world. So and, this is another interesting.
And we can also invite and ignite people we work with to film their own stories. And we becoming like some kind of curators of those narratives. Again, you walk into, I have a portrait that a kid took of me in Mumbai. I don't know if you know it, in Bombay, in the slums of Mumbai. And a fantastic portrait, using the mirror behind me. I was holding a cat, so you have these kids who played enough, 6-7-year-old kid in Mumbai, did some photographic portraits that I can only dream of. And that's a skill that we can, in fact, which doesn't mean that everyone is visually literate. You don't need to push it that far, but there is a potential to get people to actually film their own stories, and we can curate them. The space of interactive documentaries was that. So I think it's also large. I still find it nice to watch a film. There's still something beautiful about it, something that brings us together. But the reality of fact is that most often we watch even films on our smartphone and apart from each other. We don't really share it that much. So,
And apart from the contents like what you have shown in this film about Delhi culture and modernization, globalization, that we as students and of public health, there's also so much to capture. I mean, there are films on issues related to health, but then
absolutely.
as visual anthropologists, what do you suggest? Like, not just the photo, what you call photo documentation or images, but short films maybe would be interesting.
Absolutely. See, when I started this work on aging, so which I call Dying, Living, and Loving, when I was looking for the terrain, I stumbled upon groups of self-help in relation to depression. And I thought that would be a place where I would do a participatory exercise, like inviting people, say, hey, I create a platform, upload it, we can edit it, I can bounce it back, you can put people together, to create a narrative. I start the story, I send you 2 minutes clip, you have to take the story further with yourself and you create it. So all this playful work, I think there's plenty of opportunities. I would start there. Then all that material you can then convert into a film, right? But that's the next step, incorporating people's stories and what they do. So I can absolutely see that there are so many venues of work that would be meaningful there. Then the other thing is also the beauty of images, which is a classic, is that they allow you to go back to them. A lot of the experiences we do otherwise are not really, we cannot reproduce them again. What I had in mind with the 20 years later is to really go back and have a walk with Neeraj in Connaught Place and see where Malika Bazaar, in fact, has remained, but it's one of the few places that has remained. The gardens are completely redone. So just when you see also how a city changes, we call it, it's an elicitation method, right? When you put images in front of someone and you ask them to talk about them. So I would like to just see these snippets together with the same people and say, where would you take it next? Where would you take me now, right? What is the place that symbolizes the modern? Exactly, the Gurgaon no longer needs to go to Saket or whatever.
Right opposite to Jain, you have
Right
those big
opposite,
malls.
yeah, exactly.
So any other reflection, comment?
As a visual anthropologist, but fieldwork is very expensive for students here by itself. Just the ordinary fields on everything.
Yeah.
And this kind of fieldwork, how much more resources would it need? Are there places where they can get themselves trained? Are there courses that are available for them? I mean, if you could share some of that information, I think it might be useful for some students who may want to or aspire to use this as a method for themselves. So some ideas of course, because even though we have cameras on our phone, but there are so many softwares may be needed, other things may be needed, editing skills, etc.
Yeah, you can do it. The cost today, that's the beauty of smartphones, in fact. You can actually lower the costs extensively by using a smartphone. You can do a lot, especially if you incorporate the participatory element. Then you can actually kill them. From there, you can go up to using hyper-professional cameras and pay whatever. But I think the cost would not be the most scary thing. The time. I don't know how it is here, but we struggle in Europe with the fact that there's less and less time for field work, and the students are asked to come very quickly up with the topic, with the team. That you're asked to phrase. Even I, when I apply for funding, they ask me for hypothesis, and I say, "What do you mean?" So, what is a hypothesis or qualitative research? I have no clue, right? Yeah, about the extent to which modernity expresses itself visually. That's my hypothesis, and they, of course, the jury will have difficulties in phrasing that argument. So the shift that we have in the funding methods are also imposing a need to come up with questions that can be answered, really. And visual methods are generally putting you exactly in the opposite direction. Yeah, they actually open you up to stuff you had absolutely not thought about. Because even this film, look, I was doing this ethnography about, I mean, relatively wealthy, influential, middle upper class men who were starting up new businesses. I enlarged it to women, to the stuff that I had not thought about. So film does that, it takes you places you hadn't thought about. That to me is the key problem. Which doesn't mean that we should not do it because of that reason. And trainings in India, there is not much visual anthropology, but I've seen over the years a desire to do it. So I was visiting Professor in Ambedkar for many years, and I was doing that. But the crowd at Ambedkar is mainly artists, right? And I was teaching more the ethnography part. But then with this Bombay, we did the opposite, right? Teaching a bit more of the playful, creative methods, right, with social science environments. So I don't know, in fact, in India. In Europe, we have courses, we have institutions that are specialized on that. But often there, it's also like very much focused, like you have a lot of courses on ethnographic filmmaking, right, and in constructing a film, which to me, it's more interesting to start on visual methods. So the suggestion I would give to anyone is just look at the space of visual methods and see who does that or not. Or try to create something around visual methods, which to me means starting from your capacity to observe with your whole body, your attention to smells and other things, then moving on to a camera, taking stills, then moving on to moving images, then moving on to sounds. And then you start looking and comparing and see what you learn about a topic by looking at it in different angles. I don't know who does that in India. In fact, I have no clue how much you have those kind of courses specifically on visual methods.
We just have one course in Delhi University, Department of Anthropology, one faculty teachers, Avithuli.
But is it visual methods or is it more ethnographic filmmaking?
Ethnographic filmmaking. Yeah. So many of our students, they do come up with small films based on their fieldwork also. Delhi University Anthropology Department, Dr. Avithuli Zimo. She's the one who's teaching this whole course. And down south, I don't remember. So that's why, first of all, anthropology departments are very few. And visual anthropology is something which is not yet there. And India is rich of visual cultures and so much to capture, actually.
Absolutely. But you could, I don't know how the sociologists are put on that, but visual methods is, for us, an arena that kind of overlaps visual culture, so also a bit of art history, sociology and anthropology. It's quite broad. And there you can creatively grasp and create your own take.
So it is done, I think, arts and aesthetics. Maybe a colleague who's an anthropologist. What's her name? So, not really
most
sure.
of us, when we have research projects, we try something of it. We learn it on our own. We do it. But really, to offer it to the students, I've always found it very difficult to tell them where to go. This is a different story because they have media studies there, and social scientists there.
But you want to have them, absolutely. No, you see, I mean, in Antwerp, where I work, we created exactly that. We have a center that only works around the visual. So there's people from film history, media scholars, art historians, visual sociologists, anthropologists. We all come together there. We do that. So we train people into that. PhDs are around that. But I must say that I ended up there because it's the only place I could have ended up in. But it's also like one of the few, because otherwise you have like the British in Manchester and stuff. They got ethnographic filmmaking, which is this. It's a part of it, but it's also just a slice. There you got multimodal ethnographies. It's a phenomenal territory, which also brings back to the body, right? It's not, because this can also be like a linguistic exercise of meaning. You search for meaning, you find it. But the camera is also there to open you up to a set of sensory capabilities that you were not aware of, that lead you to see the world with different eyes. When I'm working with aging people, that's exactly what happens. I mean, my questions are completely irrelevant, and the questions you address are about touch. which you discover by filming, and that is not something that you maybe think about beforehand. But that's something that, I mean, we should coordinate on that and think who is doing that. I would be very curious to know more about that. Yeah, yeah, please.
As a researcher doing PhD, I just wanted to know why we should, you know, uh, be more creative in our methods. Let it be of capturing the field, or the style of writing, or even approaching our research as such. So, doing research, there is always this tendency to stick to the
Yeah.
old methods, because it makes it somewhat easier that way. So it is kind of hard to maybe I think how I can come up with something different, or how else can I look at the field, or maybe bring out something that only my observation cannot bring about. So how did the element of creativity help you as a researcher? How did it add to your understandings from the field in your research aspect? So that, as ma'am said, we don't have much exposure, to to take inspiration from others who are making these films, and somehow when we see such films, we are inspired, and we understand that okay, there is much more that you can bring about from the field. And so, what was your experience in terms of researching, and how did it add value to your research, if you have felt?
Again, I wouldn't draw in my research, and surely not this one, because I did my PhD 20 years ago when there were no time limits. Right? It didn't mean that we were funded all the time, but we had no time limits nevertheless. So I could allow myself to say, okay, I do a film, and then I see what happens, and I take it. So that was a bit different. And I don't think the benefit is for any kind of research, but there surely is a benefit as to your capacity to discover the limits of the questions you ask. Because if you go, I mean, interviews to me are, of course, a key tool that we use, but an interview contains questions that are framed within my own cultural categories per necessity. So it would take a long time before I can ask a question which is like situated in the world of the other, right? Now, attention to the sensory does that more in a faster way. You shift your attention, you start exploring things away from your cultural categories because you dissociate from language simply. It's different parts of the functioning of the brain, and there's a knowledge by explanation and knowledge by acquaintance. Images are, David McDougall said, a pathway to the senses, right? They redirect your attention to embodied knowledge, which happens by acquaintance. I learned to do things the way you do. And then I learned to ask questions from within that. So that minimizes the risk that questions are ethnocentric, right? Or a projection of our own myths, knowledge, call it whatever. It's like, I know it sounds a bit weird, but I've gone back to meditation as a practice in the practice of ethnography as one fantastic antidote. Meditation teaches you to see, and see repeatedly away from thought, right? And that's exactly what, an ethnographer should do. Just interrupt the flow of thought that you have. Don't project categories. Now, the level of communication is different, though, because this is an exercise in communication. This has an agenda. This wants to tell European viewers like, yoo-hoo, India is not, about development. India is not about spirituality. It's another thing, right? So at the level of communication, I think the visual is powerful because it reaches audiences that you would not reach with a scientific article. But these are two separate agendas. One, again, is the visual as a method of inquiry and what it does to you and the risks thereof, because it will surely create like some questions that you would rather avoid, right? But those questions, I think, in the long run are good. To me, a good scholarship is always about raising good questions rather than giving good answers. At the level of communication is that it's really a powerful tool to reach out and to also allow viewers to offer you new questions, because by showing this film every time I learned something new, because an image is way more open and polysemic than academic text. People see stuff in between the lines that I had not thought about. and then it feeds back to your understanding of your field. So I don't know. Sometimes it's also like I notice it when I supervise my PhD student. It's risky also to tell people like just pay attention to it because suddenly then the PhD takes a year longer, right? But it's also beneficial for your actual true engagement with the terrain. I don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's a film club. So we should be talking about the film
Yeah,
more
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
anthropology less. Sorry about
No,
that.
no, 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 no. Very, very happy to do both. As a film, it's very old. I don't know if you react to the style. Everything is very much 90s, if you want. It's the early 2000s, right? Um,
And in our discipline, we have a long way to go. First, we have to, we fought to get qualitative research accepted as really relevant for public health.
yeah.
And then to have visual methods in it, A, to teach it, and B, for examiners to evaluate it as valid, and to allow the students to get a PhD out of it. So, there's a long way for us, very long way.
Yeah, but then snippets can be used because there is still something. I mean, if you want to show the density of population and you throw up a drone and take a photograph from the top, you can show things to a camera. I mean, that's also the thing. It's not just interpretation. I mean, images also have that capacity. But again, that's in the space of visual method, not of ethnographic film. Ethnographic visual methods, visual ethnographies. That's again the terms that I'm today more inclined into using and find more interesting. So I stopped doing these things because of that reason, that I like to explore methods of research, very much inspired by Luc, that was mentioning, my colleague who's a sociologist. But I like the way sociologists, we always as anthropologists always talk about ourselves and our difficulties, but sometimes it's not that interesting. But can I ask one question though? So what would you keep? What would you throw away today? What do you think is recognizable from then to today? Thinking of me 20 years later, right? You go back. What do you think I would get that really rocks the boat and makes this film something that, someone would say, okay, this would totally be completely different? Do you see any change? Or anything that you say, listen, today, dump that chapter and focus on something and focus on clothing. Is there something that caught you as being so incredibly old and out of date and irrelevant for today's discourse on Indianization versus? I mean, there's a political shift that we don't mention, but it's like it screams loud because the film was made at the moment in which, in my understanding, that's in my written thesis, cosmopolitanism was expressing itself through Indianness, right? So while the generation before, same age people, maybe in the 70s, would have gone the Western way, my friends were going the Indian way. They were very proud of this background. So I am cosmopolitan, I'm westernized, I'm rich, whatever, but I'm very proud of being Indian. I don't want to move, and become American. I'm very proud of that. Now, this phenomenon till today has changed its own significance extensively. So, is there anything in today's India that would look so different according to you? Is there something that you reacted against that went like, oh, that looks strange?
Consumption had remained the same, but I think that was the most fearful aspect of the movie.
Correct.
Being, of the metropolitan environment and trying to see that kind of glory or pride within whatever is happening. The aspect about the marriage scene, which was central, I felt, to the whole this thing. It brings together the whole narrative. And when you said that none of them are together now, so I think that it was very much clear with how things were within the movie. Beyond that, I just wanted to take away the discussion from the movie and to your recent work, which I sort of read by your book. My name is Shan.
Uh-huh.
I am doing my PhD here in human health, and I just got back from my ethnography, 16, 18 months long ethnography.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw that you worked on two transmen on being on a live stream platform.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was feeling it was quite interesting for my work as well because I followed a trans person
Yeah.
to get their gender affirmance surgery for like a month.
Yeah.
It was like that primary care visit, and which I am trying to get into my
Yeah.
and you are exploring the aspect, and beyond that, I have also done like field work which involves transgender women who are out there in sex work, who are facing like, violent conditions, and they're still in that setup. My question to you mostly is to do with the labor aspect of it, like, the labor that goes into like that you have explored in the paper. I think is behind the scenes what is happening. So I would want if you can reflect.
Yeah, that is a shared project with one of my PhD students, and it built on her friendship with one of the people we wrote about. So it's a very similar project to this one. It's again a very intimate ethnography, but I should put you in touch with her for that piece of information. What we covered together was the use of the camera, as again we tend to think of images as mirrors towards the past, right? In a way, you know the language we use, capturing, shooting, it all kills something, right? That remains there in the past, and we can pick it back in the future. So my approach, similar to a lot of other scholars, is to turn that around and look at images as beacons to the future. Images are performative, right? They are things that make us do, that make us act. Very concrete example, rock carvings make you walk. They physically activate you, right? So different types of art like indicate how images are not just mirrors of the past. We applied that argument to YouTube, right? YouTube is, and transvlogging is about anticipating the transformations of your body as you are taking doing the steps for transiting, right? So we looked at the performativity of images, and that is to me kind of a theoretical line that I've applied a bit everywhere. So Eva Turnison, that's her name, she's now doing a postdoc in Brno. She had this ethnography, and then together we worked out this idea that the image comes before, right? The image is what you have to become. Fitness communities are another very good example, right? And you have a lot on Instagram and stuff. It's anticipation of the thing to come, right?
But then again, when we talk about performativity, what happens is with trans bodies, especially in terms of visibility, there's a lot of discourse, there's a lot of things happening in India. But the fact that still remains is when they put out themselves, the kind of transition they go through, there is like a lot of censorship that goes into play. What kind of images like heteronormative people or cisnormative people would see about trans bodies is sort of censored, is sort of shut down. So that is the kind of place that I am coming from. That's the kind of things that I am dealing with. So it would be lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that reminds me also another, which is quite a funny anecdote. Another PhD that I had the joy of supervising was by a photographer who is practice-based PhD in the arts, where Lisa's her name. She looked at transgender communities in Bombay, right? And then the whole benevolent discourse around giving visibility was like, hell no, stay away from that, because of course the economy of this was part of the connections with Mumbra that I also have. The whole economy builds actually on the fact of not being visible and not being respected for the moment of the transaction, right? Because otherwise the whole ritual falls. And that was quite interesting because I had to struggle quite a bit to get her to enter that space and think that, well, she said, yeah, but ethically I have to do it. I said, no, ethically I have to respect the needs and not harm them. In this case, that was then those photographs, amazing work, was completely censored by the Arts Academy of Antwerp, saying that this is cultural appropriation. So what regards? Yeah, because your colors are saturated. And I was like, no, there is no saturation. Moonbrat night, you can imagine, whatever. Slum era is very, and those colors were unrecognizable to the committee, so we had to struggle quite a lot. And then Lisa used to do this, being walking out with the community, being dressed by them, and that was, of course, banned as yet another even more complicated form of cultural appropriation. So that PhD, in all its simplicity, because it was a fairly simple PhD around photography and method, became such a condensed so many teams that are so actual today. And for the Arts Academy in Antwerp, this was their own way of reclaiming decolonization. And then, of course, I flew up to the roof and I said, well, no, this is really your imposition of cultural categories that do not belong to that world and do not belong even to a generic idea of India. It's a very specific subculture. So I would like to put you in touch with both of them and to direct you towards their works. And there's a third person that I just met before coming who's defending his PhD on fashion and transgender communities in India. Marius is his name, in Antwerp. So it's three people. So they will surely benefit from your work yeah. And there's also an article we wrote about Chatterbait. Yeah, there's one on transblogging, one on Chatterbait. Okay, you were referring to that. So there is also one on transblogging on YouTube. So that I should put in direct you towards that.
It's very interesting with like sex work and
Yeah.
trans
Yeah.
Especially trans men. There's like very few work
Yes.
done on like sex work, but the kind
Yeah.
of lives that they live, especially the lives that they're trying to hide from the
course,
public
yeah.
scrutiny. And the trans women, especially, has not been investigated.
Yeah.
The aspect of labor that
Yeah, and it's there through this idea of the distributed agency of the algorithm, because there's a label which is also third party, and yeah, I'll send you a couple of more things that we did together. Yeah, but Eva is the person you need to talk to. Yeah.
I think one thing that I'm not from Delhi, so I think people who are from Delhi might be able to answer this or have a take on it. But when the journalist Neeraj mentioned that people from Delhi don't come to Old Delhi, while you show clearly that
Yeah.
people being there. I think now there's perhaps so the idea of Delhi life is perhaps not as strong as much as like being from different parts of Delhi and like people from
Good
Delhi
point. Yeah.
like mountains of Delhi that maybe there's a shift in a
It's a good
breakdown
point. Yeah.
of Delhi life. But the other thing is also with Indianness, I think there's been a greater commodification of heritage, and so that has led to so he wouldn't probably say that now. Like he would probably invite you there for like heritage works.
You're right. Yeah, heritage works exactly. Yeah.
That's
That's a brilliant point, both of them. And in fact, I think Delhi now, I mean, Anil is this guy, the tourist guide, who made a spectacular career, really dumped Delhi University, where he was doing a PhD in teaching, to become a tour guide, built an empire. I mean, he bought land, he was just a smart guy. So he was in Noida. Noida was still like, look, the way he speaks as something external to Delhi, and now it would not. I mean, despite legally being another entity, but it's part of the. Yeah, that's just what is Delhi at that point. Yeah, but brilliant point.
I would like to add because I shifted to Delhi in 1998, and that's
Yeah.
where we started shooting.
Yeah.
And then till today, when I see in 2000 also, when we used to go to that first mall in Gurgaon which you showed, it was all fields in that Jaipur highway, that Delhi to
Yeah, I
Gurgaon.
remember that too.
Both sides, the road was under construction. And 20 years down the line, you see there's the whole thing. And the moment you enter the Gurgaon, it's more like any other, maybe like Singapore or any other place.
Yeah, you're right.
And here in Delhi also, the whole thing changed with metro coming in. And despite having metros now, you see that same traffic, same number of vehicles on the road. But go to metros, you'll see as many people there. So, but then the globalization, what was happening then, has become much more, in volumes in terms of number of malls coming in, people going to malls, and it's easier, as you mentioned, that everybody is in under one roof. So people find it easy. But at the same time, the charm of these smaller, like Chandni Chowk, these are still there. And people do love to go once in a while for a specific shopping. And in fact, Delhi has this very interesting. You have clothes, one market entirely for clothing,
The old
one
bazaar
entirely for the
structure,
lights,
yeah.
and one entirely for something else. Like there are specific shopping sites, not malls, but sites where everyone would like to at least once or twice a year they
True,
try
true.
to go.
Yeah.
That is maybe there are more things to
Yeah.
think about. 20 years, how things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it's true also because the bazaar structure is a bit
Right,
broken
right,
by
right.
some of the new markets. Does any one of you, so completely unrelated, any one of you know still a photo studio where they use backdrops, so not digital? I mean, they may use digital cameras, but I remember I had two up in Old Delhi, and with COVID they have disappeared. Do you know of
Things
any?
have changed completely.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed after COVID, but I think still some photo studios where you have those black
Yeah, the
backdrops.
beautiful.
or
Yeah, I
green
wanted to take my
backdrops and
colleagues
old,
there, and I can't find them anymore. So I was going.
you find in Jaipur, you have still those
Yeah,
cameras
Jaipur.
in front of that Hawa Mahal. Like a couple of years back when I went, this guy had this old camera where you put your cloth and see from there. It was very interesting to get a photograph shoot from that old instrument.
Yeah, it was also my fascination going back to the Delhi bit. With Delhi was also that Delhi is a place. I'm also for my PhD. No one stays. No one, as in Westerners, no one stays in Delhi. I mean, and they they have a very like diplomats and stuff. They get a very high rate because it's considered to be a very dangerous place and a bad place and stuff. And no, this before pollution. I'm thinking even 20, 25 years ago, because Bombay had this flair of being cosmopolitan. So I put Delhi at the center of my map because it was a place that people were like, yeah, but in Delhi there's nothing to do. I said, okay, wait, I'll show you. I have an idea or two. And the cultural, the historical layeredness of Delhi, we didn't have. I still don't know of a film what made documentary made in the West about Delhi that really they made be interested in Humayun, right, and the tomb, but not about Delhi as an organism. So what you said just brought back to my mind that would be a chapter to open up. I mean, what is Delhi? How is it transforming? I mean, I'm thinking from Mughal times to 1857, where you have all this incredible poetry around Delhi and today. That's
I don't know if you would converse with these people today under the political culture that we are living with.
yeah.
How the middle class minds would narrate things to you. That might also change.
Yeah. I'm in touch with everyone, and I live with one of these guys still. The last one, the one who didn't want to talk in the film that much. It's divided field. Yeah. Pro and against, pro and anti, very very clearly.
So they put their whole view on India, modern India, Delhi might be different.
Yeah. No, I follow it. That's why I would like to do a film because I see them all the time. So I could, but that bit is way more tricky. And some have become also quite strong. Uh, yeah, pro BJP, not activists, but the majority not. But despite being business people, that's also interesting. It's not like the whole business community went in that direction. Not at all. And Kejriwal being very popular, I think, among the majority of the people in the film. So that's also the figure in between. So that I have in mind, as a drop. You see, one of the metaphors I play in the last. I mean, I'm just excited to be able to speak in a room where Bhagat Singh is hanging. The that is a Bhagat Singh. I don't see it very well from here. Yeah. The cover of my book has Bhagat Singh on the cover, and because of the his skills in transforming, it's a metaphor that is still valid. And I'll just make an example of the way in which this epoch, to my understanding, was the epoch in which symbols of Indianness, hence Hinduism mainly, came back into the homes, right? And for 20 years they were there, and then they created a kind of a background that created a new discourse around religion. Because before they were external to the homes, a lot of houses had moved them towards like Western symbols, right? But then a religious symbol can be ignited with religious meaning or without it, no? Depending on the context and the family. And their introduction in the family is a bit like a Trojan horse logic, right? When you have them in the house, you can give them a meaning or another meaning.
And that's a bit of a metaphor that I would like. I mean, because this is a question that a lot of Westerners ask. What's happened in India? Where is India going and stuff? And that I don't know whether I have any capacity. But at that point, I will go and interview some political scientists and journalists who have a good capacity to understand the phenomenon.
Amongst the people who are there in the film, there's an absence of Muslim.
Yes, there is.
I mean, absence of anybody other than Hindus.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
But maybe not bringing in the political context and communal context.
Yeah, no, but you're right. No, I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking because two of my closest friends, but they didn't want to be shown at the end. They are Muslims, but they are in the arts, so there was like a bit of an art issue going on, not for a film, for television. So they were there. They're part of it. They're part of the ethnography, but they are not in the film. But you're absolutely right, and it's also in terms of, which is something that I in my thesis never approached as that, as in terms of cast. You also could probably. Yeah, and today I would. I didn't back then, because back then I think the discussion around class was kind of, again, liberating also from a Western point of view, because everything wasn't brought back into caste. So I said, what if we go the other way? I think today I would probably do that exercise again. Exactly. Yeah, but good Bourdieuian analysis of cultural capital, economic capital. Absolutely.
I shared the book which we edited on marginalization and globalization in Delhi. And we looked at land, livelihood, and health.
Yeah.
So I forgot to show that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Look into Delhi and how things change.
Yeah.
It shows the camera is inside, it's turned inwards towards a certain, as we say, middle class is also an identity per se, and it reflects very well like what was there in 20 years, still very well, the kind of elitism and the kind of practices and the culture that we have, that we share. I think it's a good choice for focus on this particular community and the chatter, as you said, like the gossip that we do and the conversation that we have. In itself, it becomes like an interesting analysis.
It's again also very ethnic, because I stayed within the boundaries of. So, a funny detail that I had from Angelo, he said, the final scene, I know how we're going to do it. Now we take your friends, we go to a slum, we put the camera on, we leave them there, we see what happens. I said, over my dead body. You're not doing that to any of my friends. And his point was of suddenly closing the film with this incredible reduction that I absolutely could not subscribe to, but that reminded me of what the BBC did now to the reporting of India reaching the moon, where you had the banner 17 dead because of bridge collapses in Odisha. Right, and that's the narrative. It's a colonial contrast. How did colonialism work? Because something had to be extremely rich materially, extremely poor spiritually, culturally. Hence you could get the church, hence you could get the state, and they would come together. And again, reducing the film to that, I said, no, we stick to the networks and the places where they go. So the places where they go, the people they hang out with, the girlfriends they were having, they were quite rightly within that community. But it had an expansion which didn't want to be filmed, for reasons of being too high in terms of class in their own understanding compared to the others, right? So that was, and that was a matter of class again to me, and not really of religious identity as such. It's people that you would probably know also. So they are quite well known. So just get that out. Yeah, but again, the not the banning the slum. You think, okay, what would be an environment that is like totally mind blowing that no one could imagine? There is no such thing, right? I mean, even a slum would not be such a thing. But I would think today, what places would substitute these places? That's Yeah, exactly. He's still there.
For this European viewers,
Yeah.
so I think there is a perspective within that. Maybe Orientalist perspective you have.
Yeah.
So I think that was fine. He said
Yeah.
middle class, if you're covering middle class, she's right. There are lots of strength and scripture. Maybe the slang was also put sick. There is a very always there. So middle class, and Muslims.
There was one only pact that we made on the making of this film is that it would not be screened on television or public festivals in India. That was it. Which I always accept. That means small screenings, yes, but not go on television. Well, it did in Sweden and Italy, right? So, but that was a point, and it had to do actually, in fact, with the fact of smoking on television. You know, which you respect. It's decisions that you're fine with. But that was a pact also, because otherwise I would have happily also shown it and then giving it a different soul. But yeah, there was a primary audience.
Okay. So thank you so much. Paulo.
Thank you.
Yes, this last question or query, okay? Oh, sure. Okay, from my side, thank you so much, Paulo, for coming, and we really enjoyed your film.
From my
and
side,
discussion.
thank you for the invitation and thank you to all of you.
As well as the discussion. Our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Professor Paulo, for accepting our invitation and coming here. Thanks to Dr. Sunita Reddy ma'am for engaging with us and sharing very valuable insights as an anthropologist. Thanks to Ramila Bish ma'am for being here and making the discussion more interesting. It was a very wonderful film and I'm sure everyone enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much.